Hello everyone. So this is a bit impromptu, but basically I had a dream last night about this podcast, and I have just pulled over in the woods to record this podcast. So apologies if the audio is a bit janky. I've never filmed a podcast like this. Well, yeah, this is very much Moonstory vibes, like old Snapchat Moonstory. But here we go. So I had this whole dream last night about toxic traits and my toxic traits and things that I do that are basically preventing my growth. And I think talking about your toxic traits is really hard. I know a lot of people that won't even talk about, won't even sort of confront their toxic traits to themselves, let alone put them on the internet for whoever's about to hear this to judge me for it. So this is quite difficult for me because, like most of the population, I am someone who likes to think that I am a nice person most of the time, and to come online and speak about the things that make me a bit shitty sometimes is hard. So just bear with me. Just take this with a pinch of salt. So the first thing I was thinking about is my house dynamic and how I live with 8 people, and that is a lot of people to live with. And I was thinking about how as much as I'm pretty good with communication on a podcast sense, or helping people with advice, or helping people work through their trauma, doing tarot readings, all of that shit, I'm actually very bad at expressing when I have an issue with something to that person, which comes across as bitchy as fuck. when you have an issue with something, and what the fuck is going on? Thunder? Maybe. I don't know if you can hear that, or maybe it's just an airplane. When I have an issue with someone, I think this is very similar for most people, I really struggle to address that issue with them for fear that they're just gonna gaslight me and be like, I don't do that. Because I feel like that happens to a lot of people. They'll try and explain when they're younger about how they feel about something, and they'll get shut down. And it's one of those things where living in a house with a lot of people, that sort of can rebound back and bite you in the ass, because it can be like, why didn't you just speak to me about this? And then it's like, how do you sit there and go, well, because I was worried that if I was going to speak to you, you were going to gaslight me into thinking it was not real because of my past trauma, but you're not my parents or my teachers or anyone that made me have that trauma, so why am I projecting that onto you? One of them things. So it's a bit techie in that sense, and I'm not going to go into all of my toxic traits, but I am going to so clickbait this title as my toxic traits, because some people just think I'm talking about my toxic traits. I'm such a marketing queen. Basically, that is what I've done for the last 3 minutes, but I kind of wanted to talk about why it's important to be in touch with that side of yourself more. That was more the aim of this podcast. And I think the biggest thing that is an issue for a lot of people in today's day and age, and this isn't just today's day and age, this is a thing that is generational trauma. If you don't know what generational trauma is, it's basically things that affected your parents and your grandparents and their parents and their parents, and it's these cycles that follow us through. And it's sort of, I feel like we're sort of the generation now where we're breaking a lot of those cycles. We know it's wrong to abuse your children, and we know it's wrong to rape people. Most people know that. We know it's wrong to engage in domestic violence. I don't know why I'm thinking all the physical aspects. There's obviously a lot of mental and emotional aspects to it as well, but we sort of are much more aware of how these actions affect others. And I think a big part of this is honestly social media. We see everyone else as people rather than NCPs, which is funny because we have the term NCPs, but I think social media has allowed us to see that other people do have fully fledged lives, and they're not just people that you can just use and throw away for your own advantage or when you're done with them or whatever. And we sort of understand that. I think as a collective our empathy levels have really grown, which is a good thing, but also it means that we're sort of aware of what our actions do to others, whereas I think before, and this isn't a general statement, but I think back in the olden days, I guess, people, they didn't really think about things like that so much. It was, well, you've hurt my feelings, or I need this instant gratification, or like, do you know, like, it was very much, people were living for themselves. It was the very nuclear family, like, capitalist boom, like, early capitalism, like, I'm going to do this for myself. And I feel like now we've sort of realised, okay, that's not working. We need to do it for each other, you know? And I think we see how, like, these tribes live and these places that are sort of focused on a more community lifestyle, and we see how their life just looks more healthy, you know? And I think we're kind of like, okay, well, something's not working here. And sort of, that goes back to my point about how we are starting to just be more empathetic to the people around us. And I think understanding that our actions do have consequences, positive and negative, and everything sort of like, you could say law of vibration, where like whatever you do steers you a different way, and it's not. Do you know, I was having a chat with, to people that don't understand this, I always feel really awkward talking about like my spirit guides, but then that's again just me thinking that people are going to judge me because they have before. I don't care. Okay, so I was having a chat with one of my spirit guides, and she was like, you need to realise that the things you do, it's the little things you do that have the big impact, not the big things. And because I'm a person that's always looking for like epiphanies and revolutions, and like I always want like some dramatic life change that's going to fix everything, you know, that instant gratification thing. And she was like, you need to stop that. That's counterproductive because you're constantly looking for something. And the biggest spiritual rule is don't seek. Just know that you've got it. Like, it's that manifestation mindset of I don't chase, I attract, you know. Everything that's meant for me will find me. And when you're constantly looking for these big life changes, I think as well, like the past 3 years, I've been through like a lot of like near-death experiences, or people that I know have experienced loss, or COVID. Like there's been a lot of like big life events the last like 3-ish years that have sort of, I think in my brain, rewired my brain to expect big changes equal like big new life developments. It was like when I hit my head, I made a whole new group of friends and became spiritual. When we had the pandemic, we all got locked inside. Like these big changes led to like big consequences for us, and me specifically. I don't know about other people, I assume so though. And I feel like, so I've sort of rewired my brain to thinking that that is what to expect. And then when things slow down, or I'm not getting these big huge life events happen, I'm like, I'm doing something wrong, I'm not successful, I'm not going to be successful. And it's like, that's not right, you know. And like my guide was literally just like, you need to chill the fuck out. Like you need to chill the fuck out. Like you don't need all these huge revelations to happen every single day for you to like be on the right track, you know. Like you can just do things. And like what I was saying, I'll explain what I mean by do things, because that was a really brief explanation, that was a bit shit. She was basically saying like, it's in your habits, like in your daily habits is how things change. So like if you choose to get up at 9 a.m. and go to the gym and go to the library and whatever, you're going to be aligned with people that also do those things. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you get up at 1 and you lie in bed all day, you're going to be aligned with people that are also doing that. Do you know what I mean? It's like that sort of like vibration. If you don't know much about law of vibration, look it up, because I probably could speak about it, but I'm not going to speak about it very well right now. And yeah, it's sort of that thing. It's like where you choose to go influences who you're going to meet, and the conversations you're going to have, and the friends you're going to make, and you know, things like that. Like it's all basically butterfly effect. So I think the point that she was trying to make was that, sorry, there's a car pulling in. What do you want? The point she was trying to make is almost like stop seeking, like stop looking for the answers, and just know that like you've already got them in a way. And I think that was like kind of me realising one of my toxic traits is that I always just expect things to just happen, you know? Like life's not always about things happening. Sometimes the whole point, and you know, that is such a capitalist mindset of me to have. And like, I think we all generally have capitalist values because we were born into a capitalist society. But we're like, we expect things because we're always told like action equals reward, or I guess if it's a positive thing. If it's a negative thing, it's action equals punishment. What about, I've been saying this to my housemates recently, like loads, like I just want to exist as a blade of grass. Like I'm fed up of like, this is the reason that I stopped my drum and bass podcast as well, was because I was like, it's too much competition. I feel like there's too much pressure. I used to love networking. I can't do it anymore. I don't like going out with the mindset of I need to talk to people that I can interview, you know? That's not the reason I started that podcast, that, like, what would you call it, series. I did it because I liked the music and I liked talking to people. I didn't do it because I wanted to, like, get clout or get backstage or get things out of it. And that's kind of how it became. And it was just a bit like, ugh, gross, like not my vibe at all. And it just got to the point where like I was like, no, like this isn't like the type of person that I would like to be. And this is what I mean about noticing when your traits are getting a little bit toxic. Like you need to be like, because the thing is if you constantly admit that you're wrong. This is one thing I could never ever before. When I was a kid, I could never admit that I was wrong. Literally ever. I was always right. And I feel like now I've sort of realised that when you can constantly admit that you're wrong, you always have a way to grow. And it's really hard at the start to admit that you're wrong because you sort of have this image of yourself that you've built up and you don't want to like shatter that illusion in your head. And I mean, I've been like on like self-improvement journey or whatever for almost 3 years now, and I feel like it's still very up and down. I'm 3 years in and I still have moments where I'm like, shouldn't have said that, why did I fucking do that, that was not nice. But it's sort of having that awareness of being able to go, that wasn't nice, instead of just being like, well, I didn't do anything wrong. You know what I mean? Like taking some accountability, man. Like why is it so hard for everyone to take accountability? And this is me speaking from my own personal perspective. Like I'm much better at it now, but like taking accountability is so difficult for so many people. And it leads to so many more problems than are necessary because when we refuse to acknowledge how our actions have influenced someone or hurt someone, we refuse to acknowledge what we really are. And this is what I mean about like you build this image up of yourself in your head, and you're constantly chasing this idea of who you think you are, even though your actions aren't aligning with it. And then it gets to the point where you're 3 years down the line. This is me talking about myself from 3 years ago, right? Before I hit my head. You're 3 years down the line, you've created this web of lies about who you think you are. People are seeing straight through it. So the more you try to uphold this image of who you think you are, the more people are trying to sort of look through it and be like, well, that doesn't add up with what you said there, and that doesn't, and do you know what I mean? And then you're sort of like, fuck, like I've tried so hard and it's just not working. And then I think that's where like authenticity comes into it. And you know, I'm gonna talk about this quickly as like toxic authenticity or like fake positivity, and like this isn't anything to do with like drum and bass. I've moved away from that topic. I feel like I didn't segue into that very well, but I feel like there's so for my course I do marketing, and we had to look at PR trends for 2023, and something that was trending for PR this year was authenticity and making your brand feel human. Not feeling like a brand, because it's easier for someone to buy into a person and a person's story than it is for them to buy into a brand, because people are sort of more aware of marketing like techniques now. And I sort of thought that was very strange, because it's like you using authenticity as a marketing technique. Marketing is basically purely deception. Like, as much as I love my course, the more I do my course, the more I realise that like life is about selling things, and you've got to be able to sell, otherwise you're not going to get anywhere really. You need to be able to sell yourself and your product and your brand and your image. And like, it's like I was saying earlier about when you're constantly trying to sell people this image of you that isn't authentic, you don't get anywhere. It's the same as like marketing people have just now realised this. And so we try and humanise things, and we all post our fucking Women's Day and like let's be kind, but we're all still slating Olivia from Love Island. Do you know what I mean? And like, it's one of those things where like we're always pushing whatever narrative is trending. And in the 90s it was, if you're fat you're disgusting, because that was popular. And then in the 2000s it was don't be skinny. I guess 2010s it was don't be skinny, have a BBL, body positivity, fake body positivity. But then as soon as the pendulum switched back round again, and now it's Bella Hadid, fucking, they're not calling it heroin chic now, what are they calling it? I don't know, but skinny's back in, and now everyone's like, I want to be skinny. Why are we all following this fucking trend? Like, why can't we just do what we want? And the fact that authenticity is trending means that it's not authentic at all. Do you know what, like, something, I don't think something can be a trend but then be authentic, because you're just going to change what you think about it in the next 6 months when the season's over, and then you're just going to be like, oh yeah, like, I don't really like that anymore because it's not trendy. Like, I feel like none of us really know what we like, and then when you are one of those people that knows what you like, other people are like, why are you doing that? That's so weird. What? Sorry, I feel like I just went on a bit of a rant there, but I think it was a necessary rant, because I do think authenticity is something that's being falsely used as a way to capitalize. And if there's one thing that I really don't like, it is capitalizing on things that should never have been a way to make money. And you know, I've been thinking recently about my podcast and success and other people that are in this field and doing what I do and how they're doing, and like sort of viewing this as more of like a job prospect for me. And I've kind of realised that I don't know if this will, as much as I would love for this to be like my full-time job, I don't know if I could ever achieve that, because it would involve in the commodification of me. Does that make sense? Like, this is one thing that I hate about life, right? Hate's a strong word. This is one thing that this is one thing that I hate about life and modern day life. Everything is a commodity. I saw this girl on TikTok talking about how we're all constantly trying to be so different because we're all looking for a USP. Like, we can't, say you make music, your music needs to stand out, right? So you need a USP to make your music stand out. Say you are looking to start a job, what makes you different from other candidates that makes you stand out? We live in such an overcrowded world. There's so many of us now, and there's so much stuff. Like, think about, do you know what I think about? How much rubbish we all produce. Like, we all produce so much rubbish, and we all have so much stuff, and there's so much on the planet that we're all just like screaming and crying to be like seen, because there's so many people. To stand out is so hard, and we all want to stand out and be individual, so we're all looking for this USP to make people think that we're different, when in reality looking for this USP makes us all the same, because we're all searching for the same thing, which is to be seen and to be heard. And it's kind of peak, you know? Like, it's not like back in the olden days when there was like 200 people in a village and everyone knew each other. Like, we really lost our sense of community, I feel like. And there's so many different subcultures and communities and neo-tribes, I guess. And like, there's so many different types of person out there that people make their own groups and their own societies and things like that, you know? Did I just say society? Wow, I've been in uni for way too long. But yeah, I think maybe that's one of my toxic traits at the minute, is I'm being a little bit pessimistic. I don't know. I just feel like I feel like we're all trying to stand out, and we're all trying to differentiate ourselves and be authentic and do all this stuff to be noticed and be seen. I think maybe as well because I come from a community, especially within the drum and bass vibe, where it is very much stand out and be seen or fall behind. So I think that's sort of why I've been sort of socialised that way over the past few years. But I can't even remember what I was talking about originally. I really can't remember what I was talking about. Capitalism and the usual. But yeah, I think as for what I was saying about toxic traits, I think I spoke about, I've kind of forgotten what I've spoken about. This happens every time. I like forget about what I'm speaking about and I just speak. I hope I haven't said anything bad. I think it'll be fine. But yeah, so I'm going to talk about the importance of understanding your toxic traits for a bit, because I feel like I like briefly touched on it and then I started talking about like PR or some shit. I don't really know. So when I started doing my like self-improvement journey or whatever, I was very fortunate that I had a clean slate. I had all new friends. I had a new job. I was going to uni. Like, I was very fortunate to have a new start with people, you know? Because I think it's very hard to make changes and sort of like live a different life when you're still around. It's like, this is a very extreme example. Has anyone seen the series Behind Your Eyes? I think that's what it's called. It's about like this drug addict. She like goes to rehab. She meets this other drug addict, and he's like, when I get out of here, I'll be exactly the same. Like, I'm around all the same people doing all the same things. Like, it's a very extreme example, but I'm applying that to like my situation. Like, but my situation was the opposite. Like, because I had that fresh start and that blank slate, I could sort of restart however I wanted. And I understand that it's not that way for everyone. And I was very, very fortunate in the people that I found were very accepting of like being able to have uncomfortable conversations. I never really had friends before that would like want to have those uncomfortable conversations. You know those uncomfortable conversations that like you don't want to have them, but when you have them you feel like this huge weight's been lifted off your shoulders and like you just feel like miles better. Like one of them, you know. And they were very, very good at having those conversations. So while I was going through this period of like, oh, I'm so like sad and I feel like I don't know who I am, whatever, they were very understanding of that, which was massively helpful. And I understand that for a lot of people that want to change who they are or want to start like altering aspects of themselves or being aware of themselves, if you're in an environment that isn't authentic to you, this can be so much harder. And I think the thing is with like, I'm sorry, this really pissed me off. I don't know if you could hear that or not, but my radio was on. It was really, really jarring me. I think, yeah, when you're trying to get to know yourself better and understand who you are and like why you behave the way you behave, why you think the way you think, why when someone does something do you react whereas someone else might not react, what are your triggers, what is your emotional trauma, how did your parents fuck you up, like, do you know what I mean, like what elements of school fucked you up. I think these are kind of hard questions to ask yourself. Like, they're really hard, and it's especially like what I was talking about earlier about you have this image of yourself that you've built up. I was very fortunate to have that image completely shattered for me. Because realistically looking back, I don't think my ego would have been able to let go of that image that I'd created of myself. So it was sort of shattered for me, and I had to start again. I didn't really have a choice. But I think that's not the case for everyone. A lot of people, they don't lose everything they have and have to start over. Like, they just make the choice to. Do you know what I mean? So I think in a way, like, I don't know which one would be considered harder. I guess they've both got their strengths and weaknesses. But I think they're very, like, different ways of looking at it, you know? Because I think when you sort of lose everything you had, like, thinking Jordan Belfort style, you know, when he was on that yacht or something and like he was like, I fucking never believed in like God or anything, but it like made him like reevaluate his whole circumstances. Like, that was sort of, it was taken out of his hands, you know, and he could sort of look at the things that were compromised in that situation. So his jets and his money and his power, those were the things that were causing him the issues, you know. Whereas I think when you're sort of, you choose to do it yourself and you take the opportunity upon yourself, you don't really know what you're looking for yet. Like, you don't know how to suss things out. And I feel like the biggest way to acknowledge your toxic traits and the reasons that you might be a little bit of a prick is, what do you get mad about? Like, what pisses you off and why does it piss you off? And this is where like shadow work comes into it. And shadow work is basically when you've got like your light side, right? And then you've got your shadow side. And the dark side of you is basically all the things that you repress, all the things that you're scared of, all the things that embarrass you, all your taboos, things like that. The things that you don't want to deal with because you think or you've been told throughout your life that they're bad or they're dark or you shouldn't express those things. And this does include things such as, this is going to sound so extreme, right? And I really hope that in like 5 years someone doesn't like screen grab this and be like, this girl's an advocate for paedophiles, because I'm not. But these are things like paedophilia and murderous tendencies. And like, why do you think that people commit crimes in the secret and in the dark? Because they have these traits that they push down for so long until they come back and eat them up alive and turn them into a murderer. I personally believe, controversial as it may be, that if people were aware of their traits and aware of their things, and you know, I have this friend who's got OCD, and she said that a really common trait with OCD is thoughts about harming people and like harming herself. And she was like, obviously I would never act on it, but I get these thoughts about literally killing people all the time. And you know, this is the thing, is I saw this thing, I can't remember where it was, but basically it was saying about how it's very normal to have urges. Like, it's normal to see, if you have a partner, it's normal to think when you see someone else, I could cheat on them right now. But it's whether or not you do it. Do you know what I mean? Everyone can have the urges and the impulse. It's just whether or not you act on it. And I think this is the thing, is if you're aware of your toxic traits and you're aware of the things that are... Because I think when you push things down and you don't want to deal with things and you just, I'm perfect, everything seems like a good idea. And you need to sort of rationalise, it's very normal to have bad ideas. I'm literally the poster child for bad ideas. But because I've like sort of worked on it's sort of like, imagine it as like there's two people living inside you. There's like the good angel and the little bad angel. And it's like there's, you know, like the people in your shoulder. It's literally that is inside of you at all times. And when you take the time to listen to both, you'll sort of notice the differences in the way they speak to you, the tone of voice. Like, you kind of need to personify both of them, and you will soon realize that they both have very different tendencies. Like, one is going to be about instant gratification, one is going to be about doesn't care about the consequences, and like do it now, rushing and hastiness and do it quick, no one will know, like, you know, that secretive and sneaky one. And then you've got the one that's like kind of trying to rationalize it. But if you're not aware of the difference, you think they're all the same person inside of you. Also, quickly, just to mention, you're not your thoughts. Please meditate. When you meditate, you realize that both of those voices inside are literally just your brain, which is a computer and pumps out thoughts all day, every day, and it's up to you to decide which ones to listen to. You're not your thoughts. Please, please, please meditate, and you'll learn that. Biggest information I would ever give anyone is to meditate, because it will just fix everything. Sorry. So, yeah, what I was saying before is you kind of need to understand which one's speaking to you at either time. And at the start, this is really hard because you're like, well, how do I know? How do I know if this is my intuition? Or how do I know if this is a toxic trait? And I think the biggest thing is just to trust yourself. If you have a thought about cheating on your girlfriend, it's probably not going to be the right thing to do, you know? And I think it's about just starting to be aware of what those thoughts are saying. Don't attach yourself to them. Just be aware of them. Let them come and let them go. It's not that deep. Like, I have bad thoughts all the time. Like, do you know the amount of times that I see a small dog and I'm like, how actually far could I kick it? I'm not going to do that because I don't like animal cruelty and I like dogs. But it's a thought I have. Do you know, like, it's a thought everyone has. And it's fine because I'm not going to do it. And I saw this thing the other day and it was talking about like manifestation, and it was like, you need to be aware of what's going on in your thoughts, but you don't need to manifest them in... I'm sorry, I apologise for that. You don't need to manifest them in real life. And basically, the thing is with manifestation, you have a thought, you visualise something, you see it in your head, and then you do action to bring it to fruition. So say, for example, if I want to be a really successful podcaster, I will visualise me being a very successful podcaster and then do podcast things to get me towards that goal. And then my vibration will shift in alignment with that. Universal laws, look them up. Bob Proctor speaks about them a lot, and David Icke, very good men to listen to. So that's that. That's basically what you need to do. But also, take it in the other way, right? And this is the thing that this is how I know that you will do it, because I do it too. But when you think, say for example, you think someone's off with you, well, they're not talking to you, or they're not whatever, and you're thinking about it, and you could just let it go. And then the next time you see them, they'll be like, hey, and you'll be like, oh, hey, like, and then it's fine, it's done. But what do most of us do in that situation? We, like, make it a thing. Like, it'll become a thing. Like, have I done something? Or why are you not talking? And then when you next see them, you'll be weird with them. You've now, like, sort of manifested that into your real life because you've let it out of you. Like, it was inside and now it's outside because you've spoke to them weird, or you've given them a tone, or you've ignored them, or you know what I mean? You've done something to act on how you feel instead of just either ignoring it or being like, are we good? Like, you've sort of let the emotion win, right? And then likely it is they're probably going to be like, what the fuck? And then you're going to be like, why are you mad at me? And then they're going to be like, I'm not, but now I don't really know, like, where's this come from? Like, what the fuck? And then it's manifested, you see? And so it's like, if we can do it with our negative traits all the time, let's just start doing it with our positive traits. Come on, it's not that difficult. Yeah, so I think I'm going to leave it there. My brain's just switched off. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about? Oh yeah, quickly, isolation. And so I have this conversation with my friends quite a lot, and they always say being alone with their thoughts is like the scariest thing for them, which I've never really understood, because when I first started smoking weed, this is so funny. When I was like 17 years old and I first started smoking weed, I would get in bed, turn all the lights off, and like turn everything off, just sit and think to myself for like hours, and I thought it was the funniest thing ever. Like, it was hilarious. And I never really understood why people were like, I think it's just like an ADHD autistic thing that, like, my thought processes probably aren't the same as most people's. But yeah, I never really understood that, why people would be like, my thoughts are so like dark or whatever. And it's like, isolation is crucial for your growth. Like, if you can be alone all day with your thoughts, you're fine. You're literally fine. Because I know so many people that are like, they can't go places on their own. They can't do things on their own. The last thing they would want to do is spend a day on their own. And if you can learn to be not just content, but happy in your isolation, you will be chilling. Because the thing is we're constantly sort of, there's this thing, this boy that I sort of used to know put on his Instagram the other day, shout out Alfie Hart. I'm actually going to read it out because it was very real. Hold on, let me find it. Apologies. I would pause it, but I'm not going to pause it. Okay, here we go. He put, you don't have to know me very well to know that I'm not good at replying to messages. A response can come, if at all, weeks, months later, also starting with sorry I didn't reply sooner, and I rarely have a real excuse. Life is just distracting, and I find the vast amount of communication channels we have rather overwhelming. There's something incredibly weird about being available all the time and everyone having the right access to you when they want. And what's with people being able to see when you've read their messages? Wildly creepy. Honestly, I live for the days when home phones were king. Usually I read a message, have lots of nice thoughts about it, then I think I should reply, but then another thought appears and I often wins. Maybe telepathy would be my go-to if they ever make an app for it. Friendships have fizzled, opportunities have been lost, and large fines have occurred, all due to this trait. I get frustrated with myself, enter a long destructive monologue about being totally useless, and promise I'll work on it. Progress, however, seems to be slow. Instead, I sporadically post photos of moments that are not even relevant to the present. So this is a mirage, unpersonalised apology to everyone I've ever left, or I'm still leaving hanging on a reply. Sorry. It's also a subtle question to you, the internet, to see if anyone else feels the same. Apologies, because I actually read that as if I was a 4-year-old. But I saw that and I just thought, yeah, so valid. Like, there is this weird thing. Why do we always have to be so available? And it's that instant gratification thing of we can always get hold of people when we want. And I don't really like that. I don't like that at all, unless it benefits me. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't like that someone can constantly get available, like, what the fuck am I saying? Sorry, my brain's getting tired. I don't like that someone can constantly get like get contact of me, but when I can't get contact with someone when I need it, I don't like it because that's what I'm used to. Do you know what I mean? So it's a bit of like a contradiction in and of itself. But yeah, I think this is what I was saying about being on your own, is that if you can be content with the fact that you can rely on yourself, and the fact that you're sort of set in your head, and like you can go about your day and do your things without the need for someone else's like approval or validation or like affirmation of them being there to look out for you. Like, we need to be able to look out for ourselves. We are not white knights like roaming into the forest to save the fair maiden anymore. Do you know? Like, not that that's a stereotype that should be perpetuated. However, I do think, why aren't we fucking roaming into the forest on our own anymore? Because we're all a bit scared. Like, we're all a bit weak. Like, we're all a bit soft. And there's nothing wrong with being soft, but I also feel like we need to be, like, we need to have a balance. Because we'll get offended too much, and we'll get, like, we'll just need to chill out. Yeah, it's like back what I was saying earlier when they said to me, chill out, you need to calm down. I'm going to end it there because my brain switched off, and I feel like the last 10 minutes of this has been a bit weak. So I do apologise for that, but I hope, yeah, my brain's actually a bit frazzed. I do apologise, but thank you for listening. Love you guys, bye.